everything elicits so many responses, and you gotta like you have to battle with yourself, and you're like, no, that thing right there is a different color than everything else, and I just, something tells me just keep at that's actually our self is developed through that time. And there's something about the way that you're talking about it and how literal it's been for you that's really having me see more of the structures of the things that I'm looking at and working with. It's really great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mercury Black, and I'm here today with Guy Sengstock, and we're just going to jump right into this. So, as we were saying before we started recording, Guy, there's something going on at the moment, like both the intellectual dark web, the intellectual deep web, the intellectual light web. There seems to be a larger thing operating that Jordan Peterson, which the channel started around his work, through John Vervaeke, yourself, Jonathan Pajot, Paul Vanderklay. There's something going on at the moment. What do you think it is? Because you're clearly participating.
Yeah, totally. And I think I'm along with everybody that at least I know who I've talked to, I think would probably say something very similar, which is we're all really excited about what we're doing together. And if you ask us what we're doing, we'll be like, I don't know exactly. You ask us, who are we doing it for? We're finding out as we're doing it, right? There's something about, I don't know exactly what it is, but I know that it is, it has a feeling of the feeling I get about everything that's felt like this has been good, right? For me, there's kind of a quality of emergence, like a sense of like I'm listening to some whisper, right? That I start to realize I've been following a lot longer than I thought as it reveals itself, right? And I think along the way I've got little hits of what we're doing, right? Because for me, I just started this. I really actually didn't have any intention other than having a sense of listening to podcasts and thinking there's so much more you could do with these things. Like and being a circler, and doing circling, which we'll talk about a little bit too. But I was sensing like there's so much more available in a conversation. So I was like, okay, so I'll stop complaining about it and I'll just start doing a podcast and I'll just start inviting interesting people on and try to hit a sweet spot. This was my only intention, try to hit a sweet spot between like a normal conversation and something like circling and see if I can just feel into that place. And it so happens that the first person I officially had on my channel was John Vervaeke. And I totally, by the time I started talking with him, within seconds, I like totally forgot that I was videoing. I forgot any of my intentions. And at the end of it, he was kind of like, whoa, this was really different. And I was like, oh yeah, there's this we're doing. And that started a friendship with him and I. And then just through that and other people, apparently, then came Rebel Wisdom, right? A lot of these threads that I'm sure a lot of people listening are familiar with. On some of that stuff I already knew about, but it wasn't a cohesive thing for me. And now I'm finding myself after the fact being part of some kind of conversation or some kind of dialogue, that a lot of what the dialogue has become about is understanding the thing that we're experiencing together. And it's fascinating that way. I was just thinking about, I have a new client of mine who's, turns out he was like a math major. He was really into math, and we started to talk about like, well, what is it that glows for you about math? And he started to say, yeah, you know what it is? He's like, when you do the formula like, you know what the next step is, but you don't know where that's going to lead you. And it's that sense of a sense that you're heading in the right direction, but it's not really clear. But then when you get there, and he says, like, I got this sense of like the language trail that you lead through all of that is like when you look back, it's called the formula. It's the mathematical formula. But while you're in it, right, it's just this process of like this sense of concealment or withdrawal that's like that you that's concealed, but it's drawing you, and then it's revealed, right? And then you start to understand what you were, that whatever that sense is, that weaving together, that process I'm familiar with. And it just feels like it's happening on a much bigger, more public way than I've ever experienced it.
That reminds me of like when I've heard Jordan Peterson talk about, I think, Piaget's childhood development models,
Yeah.
where there's a level of childhood where the children can play a game together,
Yeah.
but none of them can describe what the game is. They're
Yeah.
capable of playing it, but remove it and they can't describe what they're doing.
Right.
Perhaps this group is the toddler form of the, like, Ken Wilber's integral stage, and that
Right.
this group is beginning to do something new that's emerging,
Yeah.
but is it the toddler form where we're going to have to play the game for a while
Yeah.
before we'll be able to verbalize or even really understand what it is
Right.
we've been doing up until now?
Right. Right. Absolutely.
And so, where do you get the faith to dive into that? Because it sounds to me like, and for
Yeah.
me, it's, I long
Yeah.
ago just, I turned over my will to God and said, look, you just
Mhm.
tell me what I'm supposed to do and I'll follow.
Right.
So when you talked about feeling out the good and
Yeah.
following that, that's
Yeah.
what led me to doing all of this. But
Yes.
I've done it in such a crazy, mystical way.
Right.
And I know how much faith it takes to
Yeah.
act that way.
Yeah.
What's given you the faith to follow this
Right.
feeling, and especially in such a public way,
Yeah. Well, what's
when
actually,
you don't even know
yeah,
exactly what it is you're doing?
totally. The thing for you, I really got it. I felt like I saw a glimmer of it when you're talking about it. the a very like the faith it takes, I think you said, to go that way or to be that way. What is it like? How did you, what's your experience of that?
Well, mine is when I became bipolar, like full on. I got hit by a bus, and that triggered my first mania when I was 26. I was crossing the street. And
Uh-huh.
so the psychiatrists say I had the genetic predisposition, and it was
Yeah.
the traumatic event. But it was full blown mania into complete psychosis,
Huh.
where, and not the mystical powers I have now. It takes time to refine that. This is an out
Yeah.
of control psychosis.
Right.
And for the first 5 years, it was just a horrible cycle for me, in and out of mental institutions
Mhm.
against my will. My original
Mhm.
cycles were 3 years long with 2 years of depression.
Right.
And it was because God just hammered me out of my old life. Like, nope,
Yeah.
you can't live like that. Like, hammer, 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 until
Right.
I had to realize, okay, I'm meant to walk some different path. And then I went into isolation. So
Uh-huh.
after my second major breakdown,
Huh.
the government was like, look, we don't need to be replacing cop car windows or burdening the hospital with you when
Yeah.
you're in a delusion that the world's already ended. Just
Yeah.
go on permanent disability. See if you can
Yeah.
get yourself under control. And my
Right.
first 2 years, I didn't tell my friends where I'd moved. I
Hmm.
didn't have a phone, internet, or car.
Hmm.
My siblings, I didn't have them visit. I only saw my parents, and mostly just to drop supplies. And for me,
Hmm.
it was, I wasn't going to survive life unless I turned over to God. I was one of those ones where He put me right on the edge where I couldn't
Yeah.
turn away from Him and
Yeah.
survive. It was, I was
Right.
hammered with just things beyond my control so that I had to turn weeping to God and
Right.
eventually learn to say, okay, thank you for these hardships. Show me where this goes and what this is meant to teach me and make me.
Right.
And it's taken over a decade of living that way to lead me to where I am now. And
Yeah.
it led to, like, Andrew Jokum is the one who started sorting myself out based
Hmm.
on Peterson's self-author.
Right.
At one point, my angel told me to message him. I came across
Mm.
his video with Peterson, and My angel told me to subscribe. I'd help him later.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, I messaged Andrew, and we ended up becoming friends, and he used me somewhat like a mentor for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, when he wanted to quit doing the channel, he
Mm-hmm.
asked me to take it over. And my angel confirmed it was something I had to do. And I
Right.
couldn't do it on my own, so I'm lucky he asked like me and Ryan together to team up and
Yeah.
take it
Yeah.
over. So yeah, for me, it's that crazy and the experience. Like, I'm not claiming what objective reality is. I'm just
Uh-huh.
saying phenomenologically, it's
Yeah.
as though when I got hit by the bus, I moved into a fantasy novel
Right.
where the metaphysical is all real. And I don't know if my angel
Wow.
is a delusion or a
Wow.
real angel objectively.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's good. If it's a
Yeah.
delusion, it's a good delusion.
Yeah.
Keeps me better behaved, keeps me from
Yeah.
killing myself. And if
Yeah.
it's real, then it appears to be a good angel because listening to
Right.
it has done good things.
Yeah. Yeah. I it's interesting when you talked about like the place where you got it brought you all the way to the edge, right?
Mm-hmm.
One, there's something that sounds very familiar about that. Like it's something's really familiar about it. But it struck me, it's like, oh yeah, like I think what I heard you say is like it's when like what was possible became what was necessary. Like
Mm-hmm.
what was necessary and what was possible were the same thing at one point. And what happened when you went into isolation? Was it were you it was it I got this picture of you kind of like like going at it with the demons in your head and like working
Mm-hmm.
that out. Is that what it was?
Yeah. Like working on my internal environment, the
Yeah.
self work, the shadow work, the self understanding, meditate, like teaching
Yeah.
myself to meditate also. That
Right.
was a full time job for about 4 years.
Right. Right.
2 years of total isolation. Then I got a phone and internet. I started allowing the occasional person to visit, and I've opened up to the world, but I still don't interact with the world outside of the YouTube
Yeah.
channel. It's
Yeah.
like I'm on a farm.
Yeah.
I leave my house as in I go out into nature, but I don't go
Yeah.
into society. I still get all my
Right.
supplies dropped off. I live in my own magical world with all my protection spells and shields.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I live in my own mystical world.
Right.
And I told God, like, I'm just going to worry about my own self.
Right.
If the world needs, the universe wants anything from me, it will come and ask.
Yeah.
And that
Totally.
grew over the years, where at first it was an individual would come into my life for something.
Right.
I'd
Right.
help them. And it's as it went, it was a part of my training as well. And then just eventually it naturally led without me choosing to, because I let go completely of outcome. Whatever, I just want whatever's good to happen, but by God's definition of good. And if
Right.
at one point what's good for everyone is that I crash this channel and stop doing it because that's what serves everyone best, but hey, I'm fine with that. I just want to
Right.
play my part in the game, whatever it
Wow.
is.
Wow. There's a way. Yeah, it's funny. It's like as you're talking about this, I'm kind of feeling into like, well, what is it that you have faith in, right? And when I get, I what's I can see it in the way that your mannerisms are kind of gathering, right? In your speech, almost like this kind of sense of like, yeah, I'm just going to do what it says, and I'm going to let go of the results and pay attention because this quality of just like this sense of where, yeah, what is like what the horizon of possibility and the necessity that possibility creates are very taught in in this world. And I appreciated what you said. It's like I don't know if this is objective reality or not. It doesn't even matter. Phenomenologically, this
Mhm.
is the way the worlds itself around me and through me. And then this
Which
quality
taught
of
me that that's how
yeah,
we all live. Like I was that way even
yeah,
before, just
yeah,
it was so stable I could imagine it was objective reality. But Donald
right,
Hoffman's work shows none of us are in objective reality.
yeah,
This is a user interface that
yeah,
consciousness creates that
yeah,
obviously would evolve to show us fitness payoffs, not
yeah,
objective reality. So it made
right,
me realize I was always living in a world I was hallucinating.
yeah,
Just it used to be more stable. And so
yeah,
now I know that you don't live in the same universe I live in.
right,
There's something underneath this all. but you're a generator of an entire universe that you're the
Yeah.
center of,
Right.
that you manifest out of this reality. I
Yeah.
am the same thing shining down in a different location,
Yeah.
manifesting another universe.
Yeah.
Grizz is a very quiet universe right
Right.
now, also experiencing this conversation. And
Right.
we together, almost like Indra's net, like we together co-create the greater reality by
Right.
each inhabiting our own.
Right. So there's a way in which, because I've always thought this about, I've had a bunch of friends who are bipolar, and all of them are brilliant. And I always had this sense of like, first of all, I was always like, man, if I was bipolar, I would have so much trouble not getting like wanting the highs, because the highs look so
They're
amazing,
fun.
right? They look so amazing. I mean, the lows are crazy, but there's a genius in that. That's something about like the sense of the middle of like staying tethered to whatever it is that one tethers to, and that is the sweet spot. And it seems treacherous. It always, with all of it just looks really treacherous to me.
Hmm. My advantage was like the time period where I really started sorting myself out. It was after spending 2 years in isolation, already doing the work kind of on my own. And then my archangel stepped into me. And the other reason, like, my faith is so easy for me, and I
Mm-hmm.
wondered about you, is it's not like I read about an archangel and tried to contact it. And it's like it's something I only understand in theory.
Right.
Phenomenologically, to me, my archangel is real.
Yeah.
It interacts with me. It's undeniable.
Right.
It's and as I interact with it, and when it predicts something, it happens.
Right.
When it tells me to do something,
Yeah.
it ends up being good, even if it
Yeah.
takes time and I don't
Yeah.
see how at first. So, like, to me,
Right.
I'm kind of cheating. It's a shortcut. It's not fair to compare my faith to
Yeah.
Grizz's. He
Yeah.
hasn't fucking met an angel. I was lucky. One just marched right into my world and shook my reality and didn't go away.
Huh.
Like, as I say that, I can feel his hand on my shoulder, and just
Huh.
he's never not there for me, except sometimes when I'm really struggling and I ask for help. He just
Yeah.
goes, I'm here. And I'm like, hey, I need help. And he goes, no. And just
Huh.
send me someone. No. Why? You can do this. Just know
Yeah.
I'm right here. Yes, I know you
Interesting.
want help. Yes, I know you're in help.
Interesting.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You can do this. Climb out
Yeah.
on your own.
Right.
But he's never not there.
Right. It sounds like in those incidents, is it fair to say like he's the voice letting you know to have faith?
Yes.
In
Yeah.
yes.
And also, like,
Interesting.
he's him combined with simple meditation and
Yeah.
self-discovery is how
Yeah.
I've learned everything. So later I became very interested in Peterson and Sam Harris and, tons of Alan Watts, Terence McKenna, Alan Moore. But
Right.
those aren't where I learned this stuff.
Yeah.
I got drawn to that for the enjoyable confirmation bias of
Yeah.
here's Peterson explaining something I discovered. Here's Sam Harris explaining something else. I was really taught in that ancient way of that God will just drive you fucking bonkers. All the cavemen push you off into a cave, and something divine that only you see shows up to do your
Yes.
training.
Yes. Yes.
I've played that ridiculous role
Right. Right.
at the moment.
Right. And the sense of so on another level, I think what I'm kind of getting is on one level, the thing about like that you could say that I think you said like I don't think you said this, but you said like you got the cheat sheet because everything's just so personified and articulated and it speaks directly to you that it's almost like you get a it's like where someone else may have to see through many layers of reality to hear the echo of that voice over time. You're just like, there it is. He's like, nope, I'm not coming. You can do it yourself.
Or other times
Yeah.
comes right in and guides, don't worry.
Yeah.
Here's
Yeah.
what you need to know. Here's what you need to do. So
Yeah.
it's not always fuck it, you're on your own. But occasionally it's no, we did this to you on purpose and you can get out.
So it's a
Go
real
on.
it's a dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah.
You're living in a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Your reality speaks with you.
And it's not even just that archangel. I connect to other things. I also I've experienced miracles or magic
Mm,
or prayers working. I
mm,
experience either I'm psychic and an empath, or I experience delusions of being psychic and an empath.
yeah,
I've had dreams that come
yeah,
true, and where I've told someone else the details before it came true. So
yeah,
I know I'm not editing my own memory of the dream, the way a
yeah,
skeptic might say what you're doing.
yeah.
I've put shit to the test, and it's always
Right.
come up like ding, 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 metaphysical's real, take it seriously.
Huh. Yeah. I can feel it's funny, it's really interesting because at least my experience of talking to you, I'm noticing as you're speaking, the one the one who is the one understanding what you're saying, it's like the world kind of looks a lot more concrete. It's really
How do you
interesting.
mean? Expand on that.
Yeah, just like a sense of just that sense of like, no, it's not some subtle kind of thing, third echo of something like that, and then it goes, "Root, no, you are going to do that, or you will do that." Like there's this quality of clarity of articulation that seems very, very direct. And I am finding myself in wonder of it and a bit jealous of it. Honestly, I think that's the feeling of like kind of just actually just appreciating the actually if we say we look at rationality in terms of ratio, like or ration, it's very rational, right? It's like you when you went into isolation, you got really clear and you rationed, right? You rationed your social connections, you rationed everything so you could listen to the one voice or the multiple voices that
Mhm.
were speaking to you. It doesn't sound crazy to me. It sounds actually less crazy to me in an interesting way. I'm appreciating walking in your world a little bit.
And that's the joke. That's why God picked me. Is it's intentionally a joke to take an old punk who chain smokes and gets high while he's talking to doctors and priests,
Yes.
rambling about psychotic delusions. It's to show
Right.
that God has a sense of humor, and I don't mind that I'm a punchline. It's fun. Like I get that God's not
Yeah.
laughing at me; it's with me.
Yeah.
Um, and to me, it's a bit of freedom as well, because I've realized there is something to deep teachings needing to be preserved from the masses. That,
Mhm.
like the way certain orders, Hermetic orders,
Yeah.
preserve deep teachings. I
Yeah.
feel the fact that I'm the lunatic magician gives me more freedom to voice deep truths, because
Right.
there's a very plausible deniability. For a person who's
Yeah.
at that materialist level, or is a
Yeah.
fundamental Christian who would
Yeah.
find my deep truths damaging, for
Yeah.
them it's very easy. I've got like to just disregard me. He's crazy. He's
Yeah.
got no authority. There's no reason I should
Huh.
have to. I can dismiss that if I wish. So I feel it's safer for me to say certain things. Whereas if someone like Jordan Peterson or Sam Harris said it, they've got
Yeah.
so much authority that
Right.
it's going to not give as many people the free will option to
Yeah.
remain in denial of the divine, or to
Right.
remain at a lower level of enlightenment.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting as you're saying that, it's reminding me of something I've been, you know, trying to like it's a little bit of what we were talking about before, but this sense of what I love about poetry, right? And is that it can presence the unknown without kind of raping it of its right? It's like it can presence the unknown without making it known. There's a set
Mm-hmm.
because if you make there's certain things that are they need to be they are in that they're concealed and their concealedness can be revealed. And I think our sense of that, in my experience, in I think our like quickening age of technology is can our ability to perceive that is so less and less and less and less and less. We only see things that we can extract stuff out of and get really clear on and have a position. But the sense of like at the edges, the angelic, if you will, the numinous, the things that the mythical, like the mystic, those things that can only be preserved, right? Presence in presence in their withdrawal in some sense. So it's like the right relationship. And I just got that sense of like, yeah, oh yeah, because I'm crazy, like I can say this shit,
Hmm.
right? And they can it still preserves something, right?
Also, it's
That's
like
really
I'm
cool.
not claiming to have a proper truth. I'm
Yeah,
just claiming I've touched something beyond me
yeah,
and that this is faulty. This isn't the
yeah,
final word. It's like we're all the blind men touching an elephant.
yeah,
I've just grabbed a different part than you have.
yeah.
But what you know things about the elephant I don't. Grizz
Right,
knows things neither of us do. And I'm not
right.
claiming to be correct. I'm aware that I'm more correct than I used to be. And I
Yeah,
hope to be more correct in the future. But it's a
yeah,
scale, it's not right or wrong. And I'm
yeah.
definitely not right.
Right.
I'm just trying to do my best.
This, that which just knows that. That which that knows. What is that? Can I ask you? That kind of goes like,
Well,
look, I may be right, I may be not. Look, I'm just continually, I don't know, right? There's a sense of like, there's something that there, or that's guiding you there. Well, how do you know that?
well, there's two places. One is there's that place Sam Harris talks about of naked awareness, where beneath all your egos, subpersonalities, and everything, there
Yeah,
is something that's just a pure awareness that is
yeah,
one with all. And
right.
the other is the, like in the high magical traditions, the higher self, the
Mm,
part of you that, and in fact, my holy guardian angel and my higher self sometimes are indistinguishable. Sometimes I'm
mhm.
not sure. Sometimes they merge.
Yeah,
Sometimes they separate. And sometimes I'm not sure if that's coming from my higher self or my
yeah,
holy guardian angel.
yeah,
Yet I'm also aware that's because both of those beings are
yeah,
so high that they're really the same thing. And that's
yeah,
also Christ, and it's also your higher self, and
yeah,
it's also Grizz's, and it's
yeah,
everyone watching's. And that when you get up to that point, we're all one thing anyway.
yeah, totally. Yeah, totally.
But we're diving too much into me, and we promise circling.
Yeah.
Let's dive into circling for a minute, and then if you want, you can
I think
wrap it
actually that
back
probably
around.
was a little circling. Actually, now
Well,
that you
yes,
mention
I think we were
it.
beginning to. Let's
Yeah,
give the audience a little, but also just
yeah.
know I see the light in you as well. Like you
Uh-huh.
work for the same parent corporation I do. I see that.
Uh-huh.
So
Right,
if there's
right.
anything I can do for you, if you want to work on getting in touch with anything I'm in touch with, we can do
Mm-hmm.
private sessions or
Mm-hmm.
but just yeah, and
Totally. Yeah.
I'm a fan of the whole project, you and all your friends.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whatever we can do here at sorting myself out, but also on a
Right.
one-to-one level, you and I can
Yeah.
work on things. So I'm not cutting
Yeah.
you off at digging into my lunacy, but
Totally.
I'd love for
Totally.
the audience to get a little bit about circling and you
Yeah.
before we go on
Yeah.
about me too much.
Totally. Well, it's
So what is
interesting
this
because,
circling thing for
well,
someone who's never heard of it?
it's funny. It's funny. The thing that just happened, like in a certain way of just like, who are you? Like and then noticing what it's like being you. I wasn't even thinking about circling. I was just, but that's essentially, it's that basic I thou connection, to be able to kind of see, to be able to, I was actually made a little video today. I've been doing these little videos lately. I don't know exactly why. Something, something about, because I've just been doing, I've only been posting these dialogues that I've been having, but I haven't really just posted just things, but I've been just doing these little things where I'm like taking a walk and and just start talking about something, and they're taking on a little life of their own, I'm noticing. And I was just talking about today this sense of what Buber calls the I thou, right? Like Martin Buber, the you could say he's kind of, you could say he's a kind of an existentialist theologian,
I'm
Jewish.
not familiar with them.
Yeah. So he basically says, the way he puts it is like, so human beings, right, are a relationship. And in the way he kind of poetically puts it is that we are either in an I thou relationship or an I it relationship. And what he says is, there's a way in which when you're in an I-it relationship, the it is an it by virtue as whatever it is that you're relating to is a means to an end, right? And he says the I-it relationship, right, is the world of time and space, right? And then he says the I-thou relationship is harder to describe, but when you become thou, right, you are not a means to an end, you're an end in itself, right? So there's that quality of like, you kind of what I think Killick would say, you know, of dwelling on what is of ultimate concern. It's almost like if you took the concern and you saw it and faced it. It's like kind of like the place where the whole world gathers in that moment, and time disappears, and I becomes through thou, and thou becomes through I, right? And I would say that, like, you could look at it like this, that our ability, we kind of look at it, yeah, if we look at it in kind of Buberology, if you will, which I really like, starts to architect, like you could start to see how it reveals you could say, the structure of the intimate integrity of relations that have human beings be the way that we are, right? And that relation, I-it, is one that you can make people in it, right, in ways that are really obvious, but there's also ways in which you can make people in it in a very subtle way, right? So it's like, and here's the thing about it, is that, as Buber would say, I-it and I-thou is always spoken as one word, right? So it's not to get the ontological depth of this, or the existential nature of this. It's not like I'm a I that then relates to an it, or an I that relates to a thou. No, they happen as one, right? They're like spoken as one word. So it's a different I that arises when you become thou, right? So then an I that arises when you become it. So I would say in that moment, right, as I was like kind of getting your world and kind of speaking and just following my interest, and you were kind of disclosing yourself to me, I disappeared for a little bit. You're like, hey, like let's talk about circling. I was like, oh shit. Time and space kind of came back together. Circling, I would say, is really, it's a practice of, you could say it's kind of like a yoga of I thou. It's a I like to use the analogy of circling as a practice, which is really what it's become. It's gotten known to be. It's a relational practice, a relational yoga, whereas just like a yoga class, right? Really, a yoga class, you're doing these postures. You're basically taking basic body mind sets, right? And you're breaking them archetypes, the asanas, and you just go into a class and you go deep in these asanas, right? Such that when you walk out, when you're walking down the street or the next day and you're not even thinking about the yoga class you took, your baseline in all your relations with your body, mind, and the gravity is just a lot more open, right? If we said that, like, I thou are relationships, if we like imagined we made them like asanas, and we got together and we did a yoga class, or a relational yoga classes, we just go in these deep dives into these asanas and exercise the machinery, if you will, to use Vervaeke's language, that lie under deep connections, such that when you walk away and then you're talking to your wife or your husband, you're just a little bit more open in your response, right? You can see them more. You can like share yourself more. You can be a lot more relationally available to your world, right? And the nourishment that comes with that.
And from everything, because I've heard you speak before,
Mm-hmm.
from everything I've put together about the way you view circling,
Mm-hmm.
it seems to me that what you do with another person to create the I thou,
Mm-hmm.
for me, magic is that you can also do that with every other aspect of reality.
Yes.
You can do that with a rock, with a tree,
Bingo.
and you can do it with the Virgin Mary or
Bingo.
Krishna. And that you can do it with your own sub personalities. You
Yes.
can do it with the very nature of reality.
Yes.
You can learn
Yes.
to have that with anything, that there's some sort of
Yes.
pan psychism, I suppose, or that to me,
Yes.
it seems that like from the Kabbalion, the Hermetic principle that
Right.
all is mind.
Right.
That seems to me accurate from my
Mm-hmm.
interaction with the world. So it
Yeah.
seems that like just what I'm doing with my angel is very
Mhm.
similar to what you're doing with another human being.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And you're
and
right.
how did you discover it for yourself
It's like a really fucked up childhood.
Okay.
It's funny. I was like one time, Jerry and I, we were the two that basically had the experience with a group of people at Burning Man in the middle of the night, spontaneously. It just circling happened, and we basically, Jerry and I walked away, and it was him and I that looked at each other, and we were like, that thing that just happened. Like, we didn't have a word for it, but we both pointed to it, and we knew exactly that there was something there that we didn't have a word for, that was distinct from all the other things that we were doing that were kind of like that. Something spoke, and we just both spontaneously brought our hands out and shook on it, and we had no idea exactly what that meant. 22, 23 years later, right, with the help of a lot of different people, right, um, and a lot of fumble fucking your way through, like beating our head against the wall, realizing things, but still listening to that same thing that we were pointing to, like whatever that is. I feel like I'm still listening to it, and just like the mathematician I was talking about before, right? Occasionally I look up and I look at the length of time, right? And the trail that like listening to it made, right? And you have this practice called circling in all over the world, and people participating in it. But my experience has really been, and I think this has been my role in circling, is kind of feel in a sense that it's more like I've been responding to something that's been illuminating to me. And in so many ways, if you look at it on paper, if you look at it, some other people would say, like, just watch me on camera, you go like, you really created something, you built something. And from a certain age, like, that is true. But from the outside, I think that is true, and it's fair to talk about it like that. But from the inside, what was driving all that building was actually really paying attention to something that was emerging and is still emerging. And I've
That's
just
the
come.
sense I
Yeah.
get from that I picked up from you. And it's like with me, often in these conversations, whether it's
Yeah.
private sessions or
Right.
a podcast, as
Yeah.
I'm speaking, I enter this flow state.
Yeah.
And I have to sort of, just to maintain all the nonsense inside myself, I've had to learn pretty much constant mindfulness, but I'm always aware of what's arising. But
Yeah.
sometimes during these podcasts, and I can feel it happening now, is I
Yeah.
start to step back into my awareness and
Yeah.
I begin to experience myself the same way I experience you. That I don't know what you're going to say next. I just see
Right.
you happening, and I begin to
Right.
experience myself just happening, where I don't know
Yeah.
the end of the sentence. I really don't know where I was going with this, other than I wanted to express this certain feeling. And it's almost like there's a waterfall coming down of juggling balls, and I'm just
Yeah.
grabbing them, the ones that drop, and like passing them on to you. And it seems to just
Yes.
be this weird thing that I do naturally, the same way
Yeah.
birds sing, and that I realize I don't even have to put any effort into this. As I
Yes.
described it, I've fallen right back into, right now I feel this deep part of me is kicking back, like with its feet up and its arms behind its head, going like, watch, this
Yeah.
just talks on its own. It will just
Right.
keep going. And
Right.
yeah, right now I'm experiencing you and me the same way, where it's
Yes.
both just happening. And
Yes.
but I've learned the difference between, you learn to feel the energies of what's coming and you know what
Yeah.
to allow. So I'm not
Yeah.
claiming I only channel good shit. I've got
Yeah.
all these inner demons. I
Mm.
know the smell of them. I know the flavor of them. I know what I'm connecting to now.
Yeah.
And when it's good, I can just let it go. And when it's
Right.
dark, that's when, okay, I've got to step in and manage this. Like,
Yes.
you're not taking the seat. You're
Right.
not free to talk on YouTube.
Yeah.
We're going to do some work and discuss why you're so
Right.
upset right now. This is a
Right.
time for ego to step in and take control.
Yeah.
But when it's all
Yeah.
angels and light, then I can step back and just let it all happen.
Totally. And that I get that sense of that which can start to tell with greater and greater acuity, I imagine, the difference between the two. Like you don't even can't, what I'm hearing you say is I can't really even articulate how I know, but there's something that's tracking something that just knows. And the more that it tracks, its ability to track and hit the sweet spot, right? So there's something about these,
It's also
right?
about following the moral code so
Yeah,
that your conscience is clean, that you're
yeah,
and to me it's the 7 natural laws. Don't lie,
right,
don't steal, don't
right,
kill, don't rape, don't assault,
yeah,
don't coerce, don't trespass.
yeah,
And then you follow that hard and you do your shadow work. You learn mindfulness, you
mm-hmm,
take full responsibility for yourself.
mm-hmm,
You
right,
stop blaming anything else. It's I can't
yeah,
control the outer world, I just control me.
yeah,
And you line up, it's like Peterson says, tell the truth, and you feel shit line up inside. And it's
yeah,
we've got all these natural psychic abilities, internal guidance
yeah,
systems, and we've
yeah,
got a variety of desires,
yeah,
drives,
right,
impulses, inspirations.
yeah,
And it's about when you follow honesty, it's like really take a vow of honesty and aim at the good, where you have to be honest with the world
mm,
and yourself, and the universe will correct the rest for you. You can learn
yes,
every other deep wisdom just by
right,
taking a vow of honesty and aiming at
yes,
the good. Then
right,
you need to learn mindfulness, of course. You can't
yeah,
do work on the self when you don't know what the self is. And you have to
yes,
know the lowercase self from the higher
right,
self.
right,
But it's
totally,
all energies and experiences. But then
yeah,
shit lines up and your
yeah,
internal meters start working better and your delusions start making sense. But
yeah,
before you've done all this, when you tap into the mystic realms, you project all your shadows and nonsense into it. You
mm-hmm,
shape it and it comes back at you filled with God energy. So that's
yeah,
where you get someone starting a cult. I've heard from God, everyone's got to be castrated and the women need to do this and we're all going to kill ourselves next Thursday. That's
right,
someone who's connected to God,
yeah,
but has no idea what they are. They haven't done their shadow work. So
yeah,
they yelled shit into God and heard it echo back.
yeah,
You learn to empty yourself out, to get
right,
into the presence of God and to actually listen. And then instead of getting these weird out of control delusions,
yeah,
you get wisdom coming to you.
I
And
think,
where
yeah,
your nonsense begins to become mythical and instructive
yeah.
instead of destructive.
And even like the way that you're talking about your relationship with the world, in which like you just kind of you articulated, right? I think everything that you talked about, like I get this sense of like you it's all been honing in on a relationship, right? It's like I would imagine there was probably something about like, when the angel spoke and instead I projected my mother issue on it and then I thought da, 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 like that wasn't quite it, but then you started to like hear it better, and then you could know. I could just imagine this attuning relationship. And I think the thing you just said, I got this quality of like, oh yeah, then there's that moment where time goes away and I'm just with you, and it's almost like all of those structures become one note, right?
Mm-hmm.
That like that just goes in itself, right? This kind of sense where I don't have to think about any of this stuff. It's implicit. Something bleeds through. Yeah. That.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that. And I think that there's a quality in which when you talked about that, yeah, it's like something it just drops in. It just
Mm-hmm.
drops in. I don't even have to track it. It's just something that just drops in. And I'm gonna see if I can bring some language into this because this has just started to kind of like come into this thing I've been realizing, and this is all part of these conversations that I've been having with you, with John. And what's been great is about these conversations that people can see on the videos is I've become friends with these people. And so there is this quality, and I think everybody can kind of get this. Like when you have a really deep conversation ongoingly with somebody, they almost become a character that speaks to you, like when you're walking around and when they're not there. They're like little hints of reminding you of something or something they said. On some level, you start to realize that you are a constant. You're constantly in dialogue, right? And you're in a dialectic relationship, right, all the way down on some level. But then I have these amazing text exchanges with John and with Chris. I I joked today. I was like, man, I have a feeling that, when we, like, way in the future, when we become like an AI thing, like a billion years from now, it's gonna find us like an archaeology dig in some old server, and they're gonna pull our text exchanges up, and they're gonna think it's like the Dead Sea Scrolls or something.
Because a lot of
Because it's
people with very different frameworks, whether it's like Ken
yeah,
Wilber with the integral
yeah,
stage, or
yeah,
Dr. Greg Henriquez, where he's
yeah,
saying we're at that new plateau
yeah,
emerging. The way I frame that personally is that I experience that we're going through an apocalypse.
yeah,
And an
yeah,
apocalypse is one of those words that's bigger than I can explain. And yes, it could mean we could be on the verge of destroying ourselves. Like if this
mhm,
pandemic leads to something else, leads to
mhm,
America fighting with Russia, fighting with whoever, we
mhm,
can actually blow ourselves up, which we've never been able
yeah,
to before. But on
yeah,
the other hand, what Greg sees emerging, what Ken Wilber sees emerging, these are
mm,
also apocalypses. They're an
mm,
entire new level of reality that has
mm,
never existed before, or that it's an entire new world. If you view the world not as the dirt and the physical matter,
mm,
but
mm,
the systems, the frameworks, our mind world, our phenomenological human world,
yeah,
that it can't continue the way it's been. We're
yes,
either going to birth some sort of golden age,
right,
or we're going to have some sort of reset or self destruction. And
yeah,
to me, either is an apocalypse. And what an apocalypse is also something bigger than that I
mhm,
sense it. I
yeah,
interact with that energy. I
yeah,
know one name for it is apocalypse. Or also, to me, it's obvious that we're in Revelation,
yeah,
because not only are all the Dead Sea Scrolls and the
mhm,
ancient Hermetic texts, the Emerald Tablet, like things that people used to die and kill to keep secret,
mhm,
are now on the
right,
internet for everyone. But also, our scientists are now unveiling the Word of God to us
yeah,
by
yeah,
explaining, like infinity theory by Cantor, that lunatic
mhm,
mathematician, the
yeah,
way Einstein and all of these people are now saying, look, like here's how reality works.
mhm,
That's also to me revelation of
mhm,
God's truth that has
yeah,
been hidden from mankind up until now. And we're
yeah,
clearly at the point where, to Plato and his buddies, we're in,
yeah,
we're in the apocalypse where we have the power of gods, where
yeah,
I'm speaking at a chunk of plastic that transforms it into a magical language of ones and zeros.
right,
Then we transform that into Zeus's thunderbolt,
mm,
send it halfway across the planet to
mhm,
you. It
mhm,
creates a magic portal of me
yeah,
so that we can communicate casually
right, yes,
with
yes,
electricity and hot running water and the ability to
right,
manipulate genes and go to the moon. And,
yes, yeah,
we are those gods
absolutely,
they
yeah,
thought would one day exist. What
right,
are we going to do with this? Because we have the
exactly,
power of God without the wisdom. And that's
yeah,
where we need people circling or
mhm,
working on, Greg's program, or we need
mhm,
Pajot and Paul Vanderklay, Sam
mhm,
Harris to all
mhm,
get together and go, whoa, we are infant gods.
yeah,
We've got to grow
right,
up here and learn not to poop in our pants and pull
yeah,
each other's hair, because we
yeah,
can't do that
totally,
with this technology.
totally. As you're talking about this, I'm kind of feeling the sense of like that which can tune into, right, and have something like the apocalypse make phenomenological sense, right? Like it's interesting. when you said, I don't quite know exactly what I mean exactly by that, but I can sense it, right? You can sense the energy of it. I was thinking about this way that the musicality of meaning that happens in dialogue, right? Like there's a quality of like with music, which is really interesting to think about, because I think the way that, you know, you can be moved by like a piece of, I mean, everybody's been moved deeply by music, and it's a movedness that you find yourself already inside of, right? Like, but there's no way you can put that into words, yet that's the feeling of music. And I think it's very much, if you were to, it's like if you were to drop us right now, right, you could say the flow of this dialogue, which on some level is creating a world that's like transparent, and in some ways it's like the world is like withdrawing and becoming itself in us, in characterizing each other, right? This sense of moreness, right?
We
Through the
create a third
particular.
thing, like when
Yeah,
Christ says, when two or more gather in my name, I am
yeah,
there. You and
yeah,
I form something. A
yeah.
connection flows in the
Mm-hmm,
same way that between a positive and negative node, it can create an arc of electricity. It
mm-hmm.
creates a third thing that is its own thing. It
Yeah,
appears to me as though we generate things between us
yeah,
when we interact, and we do it also in large groups. That's what
yeah,
rituals are for, and
yeah.
that's what concerts replicate for the
Right,
sake of entertainment.
right.
And also, I was noticing very much how we tend to frame it that everyone watching this up until now looks at it like I've been deciding what I say, and that
Mm-hmm,
I'm the reason for the words that come out of my mouth. But I show up to every one of these things the same. I clear out, I get into a moment of now, I empty myself, I get present, and no expectation. So if you observe me talking to different people, you'll realize Guy's been in control this entire time.
mm-hmm.
Everything I have said, I would only have said because he was here. I would have said it differently if someone had asked me
Yeah,
the same question. And so
yeah,
up till now, it's looked like I was in control of what I've
right,
said. You can
right.
watch this whole thing, and if you pay attention probably to my energy, you'll even pick up on it. I
Yeah,
intuit that you're a good person, Guy. I'm
right.
happy to let you, Dr. Oren
Mm,
Amate also. I can sit down with him. It's fine. You're in charge. Draw whatever
mm-hmm,
nonsense you want out. A
mm-hmm.
dark, manipulative person, I would not do that.
Yeah,
I would not
yeah,
go into a flow state and let them
yeah,
dig. But with
right.
you, my angel tells me it's safe. My third
Yeah,
eye says you're one of the midwives of the apocalypse. And
right.
so I can simply let go with
Yeah,
you. Be open,
yeah,
honest, let anything that arises. And
right.
so, in that sense, you're in total control now of everything I say until this podcast ends. Also, you're in total control of when this podcast ends. So,
Right.
I'm an instrument. Feel free to play Mercury however you wish.
I really love what you just said. Like you're a midwife of the apocalypse. I I that's such a rich that's such a rich thing that you just said. Like midwifery. You know, Socrates talked about listening as midwifery, right? Like, and what I'm hearing you say, it's like this is very much this mystery, right? This kind of very almost spiritual embodied mystery that happens in connection with people is on some level, it's like the ear calls out calls out the one that speaks, right? There's a way in which a listening can be of such deep musicality, if you will, that it actually has has the character go beyond what their ability to sing is, right? Like there's a quality of where I think in a really, really rich conversation, that what starts to happen is the thing that starts to realize that it's real, it's the thing that's been doing the talking is precisely the thing that's listening, right? And I really appreciate that sense. I've always really been fascinated with that quality of, yeah, where there's a certain, and this is I think what you start to tune into when you practice circling is
And to
because
me,
it's
circling is a
yeah,
magic ritual.
yeah,
is what you're doing.
Yes.
Also a
Yeah.
conversation, anything that's
Right.
art is
Yeah.
magic. You know, magic is the
Exactly.
art, is this is
Exactly.
magic.
Right.
This is divine, and we are speaking ourselves into being as well as
Yes.
reality around us.
Right. It's like a
So I look
third,
at all
yeah,
of this like a
energy.
magical
Right.
business, not a
Right.
ground level business. I work directly
Yeah.
for upper management. And I
Right.
know that this
Hmm.
is a magical thing that I'm doing to midwife the apocalypse, and
Yes.
that I'm a part of a bigger plan that I don't know about and I
Yeah.
don't need to know about. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, the way like confident or government works, where it's a
Yes.
need to know. At my level,
Mhm.
I just
Yeah.
get what I need to know to do my job. I don't
Yeah.
get any other info. But to me, this is all magic,
Yeah. Well,
and I
that
take
sense
it with
of,
that kind of
yeah,
responsibility.
that sense of like that, I just really like the poetry of that sense of what you just said right there of, yeah, there's a bigger plan and I don't need to know what it is, right?
Mm.
And there's that quality of, I think that's a little bit what I was talking about before, a little bit of, about that quality of that sense of moreness that doesn't need to be revealed. It actually, there's a way that what I'm actually what I have faith in, right, is that plan. But the way that that plan I have faith isn't through knowing it, but actually, in a certain sense, I hear it in the way that I can let go, right? It's present. That greater plan is present in the way that I find myself just fully here and letting go. So it's present. It's both, it's strangely present and concealed at the same time. But that particular quality, just, I thought that was really beautifully said.
And when people get mania, that's when you realize like mania can just set everything on fire with meaning, where
Yeah,
every number means everything. Signs are sending you secret messages.
yeah,
Butterflies are flying to, and again, if you haven't done your shadow work, you'll warp that into some sort of paranoid conspiracy or you'll
yeah,
project your ideas. But
right,
as you progress, you fine tune it all and you're like, okay, yeah, everything matters. It's all shining with glory, like
yeah,
even the dog shit on the street. And
yeah,
also, each person means as
yeah,
much as all of creation.
right,
So you can let go with someone and be present with them. And a part of you, when you're not comfortable yet with all this mushy shit you and I are,
hmm,
connection,
hmm,
a part of you is also right that you're sacrificing the whole world right now for me. All your loved ones that mean so much to you, you're not spending time with them. You've
hmm,
sacrificed the whole world to be with me right now.
hmm,
And what you'll
hmm,
find though is each one of us is worth that. And
yeah,
we'll experience it. Well, everyone experiences it with themselves. Obviously, you're worth the whole universe to
yeah,
yourself. But
yeah,
you'll experience it with perhaps your mother when you're young, perhaps
mm,
your spouse or a child, where you're like, oh my God, this baby means as much to me as all of
yeah,
existence.
yeah,
When you go deep into the mysteries, you go, oh shit,
yeah,
everyone means that much.
yeah,
And the mother-father relationship, you know, to the child is just revealing something that's there with everyone. It's there in the
mm,
homeless person you walk by. It's not that they're not shining, it's you don't have the eyes to see it. You've still got the
yeah,
scales. You
yeah,
realize you can drop those, and it's wow, fuck, each one of us is that precious that
right,
we're worth everything. And then you realize that there is this great plan. None of us
mm,
get left behind.
yeah,
This is, and that one day everyone gets to where I am, where it's not just that I'm okay with the difficulties I've been through. I'm grateful for them. I
yeah,
treasure them. I realize my sorrow is what carves the canyon that fills with
yeah,
my joy. I
right,
realize the metaphysical reality that to build a layer of heaven
mm,
into reality, you have to dig a layer of hell.
right,
That that hell
yeah,
serves us by creating heaven. That there's no
yes,
inside without an outside, and that everything,
yes,
including evil, including suffering, it all serves the good. And that in
right,
the end, this is all divine, all good. No
yeah,
one gets left behind. There is no true injustice at the highest level.
yeah,
It's a game we chose to play. It's scary, it's X-rated, it's
mm,
brutal, it's
mm,
full of, you know, sex and rape and torture and just, but also
mm,
bliss and ecstasy. But we're beings that want to do that. Like Alan
yeah,
Watts says, that we dare each other like children. to jump
Right.
into harder lives and to move
Right.
further from God so that we
Right.
can play peekaboo with
Yeah.
safety and divinity. Oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm so lost. Peekaboo, God's there.
Yeah.
Okay. So I
Yeah.
get that that's the game we're all playing. And also that's
Right.
why I don't need to save anyone anymore.
Yeah.
I don't need to go teach anyone anything. I'm happy to sit back and I'll help whoever wants my help. But if
Totally.
someone else wants, like, and if collectively, if really what the majority of us need to do, and if our little project fails and the other group and the world, I'm also fine with that. If that's what's best for everyone, and 3 years from now it's all mushrooms, clouds, then great. I'll sit at humanity's bedside and
Right.
I'll, sing you into the grave. Like, I'm happy to play that game if that's what serves everyone best. So I don't care where the apocalypse goes because I trust the greater plan. And either way, it's worth living that life. To help usher in a golden age or to experience the end of something is an amazing thing. And so I'm up for whatever game everyone wants to play.
Yeah. Yeah. When you said, like, I'm not only relieved that I made it through some of the bad shit, right? But actually I'm thankful for it. Like, I got this sense of, and I would imagine, it's interesting, I think this is the sense that I'm getting about, like, appreciating the ride that I'm getting that you've been on, right? And I also hear what you're saying. On some level, it's actually, in a very extreme way, it's the same architecture, right? It's like just the veils are just a lot thinner, right? With the bipolar. But I think what I'm hearing you say is that like in a manic state, is it fair to say that like it's almost like everything becomes an idol, right? Everything speaks. It's almost kind of like an idolatry, right? Where
mania just connects you to the higher realms,
right?
And depression connects you to the lower realms,
right?
And for me, my cycles lined up with the year, and so it's
Yeah.
also mythical for me, like the ancient forest god. I am
Yeah.
born every spring. I
Yeah.
live mightily through the summer.
Yeah.
I die in the fall, and I spend
Right.
my winter in the crypt.
Right.
Which is also, I go into heaven every summer, and then I'm plunged down into hell. Like any good psychopath, I go through the cycle, and I've learned to go through it non-judgmentally, mindfully, and to be grateful for the whole process.
Yes.
Because it's all serving the game. And just like when I was a kid and Star Wars came out, and we were all 6 on the playground, we wanted to play Star Wars every lunch hour, but no one wanted to be Darth Vader. And so I can remember if you got stuck being Darth Vader, you'd be like, hey, but tomorrow I get to be Luke. Yeah. And so when I look at the villains in the world now, I don't hate them either. Yeah. I didn't want to play the role of Hitler. That's brutal. Right. I think, he deserves some love and compassion. And we should realize he hurt himself. Everyone else, like, we're all responsible for our own suffering. It's for our own good. And I feel honored to get to play on the good side right now. And I recognize I must have had to have played the villain before. And, I honor the people who are, if there is some New World Order conspiracy, okay, I get it. It's because we're playing Star Wars as grown-ups, and we need an empire to forge our Jedi. And so they're doing a service by being the Emperor or being Vader. And that in that way, Lucifer does a service to all the universe by testing us, by going down into hell to create the polarity so that we can also experience heaven. And I see this as cooperative between everything. Just things need to learn their place. Like demons have their place where they serve, but you don't put them on the throne and worship them. Yeah. There's something to be comforted and present with and to learn certain lessons from.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny as you talk about, as you're talking about your life, and like when I just get a picture of your life as you're talking, it's funny. Your life shows up for me as almost like, what do you call it? Icons, right? Where, that whole thing about an icon where it's like, you can see the picture isn't the thing. It's what the picture shines through, right? And like
on my chest is
trains you to be in a right relationship, right?
On my chest, I have the Black family motto tattooed, and it's non-crooks said looks, which
Yeah.
means not the cross, but it's light, which
Yeah.
meant not the church's idea of God,
Yeah.
but whatever God is behind that. And that's what I've learned to believe in is I don't believe in my idea of God. I don't believe in the icon. I believe in whatever mystery
Yeah.
is behind that.
Totally. And that I just really appreciate. I'm just appreciating how, with what you've had to contend with, the icon at one point, especially when you're manic, it starts to look like you're looking right at God, right?
Hmm?
And this real, and what I'm hearing is I'm sensing, it's funny, I'm sensing a deep austerity in you, right? In some sense of what I'm hearing you say, yeah, I remain nothing so that I can sufficiently not know the greater plan in which I can trust, right? And therefore there's something about the world that shows up like that like doesn't, I don't get tricked into that being they're not idols, but it's what they shine through. And that relationship, I'm really sensing that kind of how life or death that's been for you,
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely. Like at
Yeah.
some points, 18 months of solidly suicidal, like, because it would be a 2-year depression. The
Yeah.
center 18 months, the moment I wake up, it's all fuck, I woke up. And all day, like to the point where at times it's like I have to actively stop myself from killing myself. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, the way you'll suddenly notice you're reaching for water and your
Yeah.
body's already doing it,
Yeah.
where my body starts to get up
Huh.
to go get, like, and I went through 18 months of not a moment of relief. And it feels eternal. You believe it's also when you're in hell, it
Yeah.
it completely alters all your memories.
Right.
When you can't remember being happy easily.
Yeah.
And if someone reminds you or shows you a picture of you happy,
Yeah.
you edit it, you alter it, and it seems fake. I thought I was happy, I wasn't. I was
Yeah.
pretending. And when you
Yeah.
look forward, you're certain you'll
Yeah.
never feel anything but this. And in a way, that 18 months is eternal. You've never been happy. You can't remember it. It seemed
Right.
fake. You never
Right.
will be happy. It's suicidal all the way through. And
Yeah.
if I wasn't seriously concerned that I would exist beyond death, I would have killed myself. Like if I knew or even thought it was most likely that Ricky Gervais and Richard Dawkins were right, then I would have been gone long ago. I suffered through what I considered to be hell. I can't describe it any differently. The same way that Christ said in the Gospel of Thomas,
Yeah.
the kingdom of God is laid before the eyes of men, yet they cannot see.
Mm.
Amen to that. Also, the deepest realm of hell is laid before the eyes of men, and only those who are suicidal can see. You
Yeah.
can tune right into a very low level of hell. That's
Yeah.
what being suicidal is. I consider it dimension shifting. It's not me. Reality itself also changes. It
Yeah.
becomes hell to be on earth. And if I didn't believe that I would go beyond the grave, or at least there were times where I wasn't sure, but I couldn't take that risk
Yeah.
that I was going to end up somewhere worse because a
Right.
voice was telling me, you
Yeah.
can't kill yourself. You've got to suffer through this.
And
And
somehow that voice, what I'm getting is like,
it
basically
was
what you're saying
distant
is
at
like
first.
time condenses, right? Like the hell that you're in, it takes over the entire future and
Mhm.
your entire past. And this is now the revelation of it's fucked.
Yeah.
And so that's everything. Everything blazes of that black fire or something, right?
Hmm.
And yet there's something you could hear, right?
And just barely early on.
Totally. I'm impressed because I'm especially impressed with this is what I think I think it's starting to more come into an image of what I sensed before about, oh yeah, like the possibility and the necessity at, you had to kind of, they became the same thing at one point because I'm sitting in that, I'm going like all the horizons are taken over and all there is a faint whisper, right? And everything else is so believable. And there's this little whisper, and then something that knows to listen. It's the faintest relationship. I'm like, that's so unlikely, right? That's so fucking unlikely, right?
And I think it takes lots of us getting plunged into it for
Yeah.
some of us to come out. We're like a seed with a very low germination rate. And so
Right.
even those people who don't pass that, who at that point they kill themselves, it's like they're helping me. We had to scatter 100 of us to get one to grow.
And some of you just
They're
had to take
part of
one
the
for the team.
process too.
You're aware of the ones that took one for the team, right?
Yeah. There's people who drown down there.
See, this is
And
what's interesting. This is what's interesting is what I'm hearing is like, even in the compassion that this breeds, right? Because I hear it in your calling them here in the conversation, right? Like you made a point of just like, oh yeah, and I realize that there's probably there's hundreds of us that have kind of taken one for the team, and I get it. And you caught like I feel the sense of compassion.
or like soldiers crossing to the next trench, and almost everyone gets mowed down. But that's why I made it across, is because 10,000 of us ran for the line, and just one or two of us make it there. So everyone who fell behind us, it's our job to go back for them, or to set up the world for them, so when they're reborn, they get a better chance.
It's a real kind of cosmic sense of indebtedness.
Yes.
Right.
And that's why, like, one of my magical jobs is being a psychopomp. And one thing I do with the channel is I work with some suicidal people where they're in hell. I can't change that immediately, but what I can do is I can go right down into hell. I know how to go in there. And I'm friends with the demons. I'm allowed to pass. I'm Mercury. I'm allowed to go into hell, and I'm allowed to go back out. I'm a psychopomp. And I can meet people down there. And I can say, it's okay. I'll be present. The same way with Azrael, the way he's like, I can't hurt my angel. I can't take you out right now. But trust me, you can get out. I can go down with them into hell. And like many empaths train to learn to block, like to shield so that they can survive the world. Instead, I've learned to channel, like to let it flow, like when I got hit by lightning, just let it flow through. And be non-judgmental, present with it. So I can drop into hell and I can connect to someone where I'm crying too and I'm feeling it. Yes, we're in hell. Experience. I'm gonna be fine. I'm gonna go back out of here. And I can't take you with me directly. I can keep coming and meeting you here. And coming back out just so you know it's a way out. And so that if you're not hearing the voice, that stick it through. Like don't take the risk that it's worse. I'm going to help you hear that.
I'm noticing I'm getting a sense of just, first of all, like I'm kind of finding myself being that person in hell and imagine it like I was just picturing you coming in and going back out and coming in. It's almost like it's interesting. I can hear from being that person. I can begin to hear you as like an agent of that voice, that little whisper, right? Like I get the sense like I can imagine you saying, look, I can't even make you hear the whisper. All I can be is an evident that there's a whisper that you can start to hear, and you're hearing me. And something maybe at some point that starts to awaken, they start to hear the whisper within all of that, right?
Because sometimes we can see things more easily in others than ourselves. So and it's really hard, especially when you're insane, to value yourself. Like until I learned to accept that I was now insane and just tried to learn how to be insane. The first 5 years, I was trying to get back to normal, to hammer myself back into something. And instead, I had to accept it. But to learn to love yourself when you're in hell and when you're legally insane and useless to society is hard. But other people can see it in me. They can't love themselves yet, but they can love me. And so if I can go down there and be like, hey, no, I'm you. I've been here. I can show you by coming back. And if you see it in me, you're worth as much as I'm worth. Let's get you out of here too, because we're all one being. And none of us will be finally satisfied until all of us have gotten through our trials and tribulations. And then after seeing, and for me it required, there was this musician, Sasha DeBro, who's the bass player for the band Choking Victim.
Mm.
or like used to be. And
Mhm.
my sister burned me a copy of them doing a live performance on the radio. And at
Mhm.
this point, I was in a depression. I didn't want to live. I didn't want
Mm.
to be insane. I couldn't accept it. I didn't know
Mm.
what to do with it. And I'm
Mm.
listening to this CD, and at one point in between songs, the the disc jockey, the radio guy, asks Sasha about his organization with insane people, and Sasha just casually mentions that he's bipolar, and
Yeah.
turns out he's the same kind of bipolar as me, type 1 with
Yeah.
psychotic features. He experienced end of world delusions,
Yeah.
hospitalization, and here he was casually discussing it. Everyone's treating him with respect, and he's just doing like a reunion playing with the band. He's moved on,
Mm.
where he's made his life about discovering what it is to be insane, and to
Yeah.
treat it like a dangerous gift rather
Right.
than a mental illness.
Yeah.
And at first I was able to accept that he was bipolar
Right.
before I could accept that I was. And I
Right.
recently did a podcast with him to introduce
Yeah.
him to the audience, and we discussed all of this. So
Mm.
now I'm serving the role to other people that he
Yeah.
once served for me.
Yeah.
Hey, you're an
Yeah.
insane mess that barely understands reality. Cool.
Right.
That's me too.
Right.
Like, we're the same tribe. And
Right.
I'm fine with it. And check it out. Like, real people take me seriously. Look
Mm.
how nice Guy's being to this ridiculous lunatic. You have value too. It doesn't
Right.
matter how insane you are. Aim
Right.
at the good, do your best. That's all we need you to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I can just feel that solidarity and that sense of humility and the sense of indebtedness. And it's interesting because I'm just like, as we're talking, I'm just kind of getting it's like something like, just, in some way. And first of all, I appreciate what you're talking about, like being in hell. I mean, like, I've gone through a lot of trauma, and I've gone through some pretty intense fucking emotional states that have just swallowed me up. And I've been, was hospitalized when I was a teenager for like having all kinds of breakdowns. And so I've definitely been to like at some deep emotional landscapes. Um, and I think there's something about this conversation where I'm start to really get more of a sense through what you're talking about in a more articulated way of that being us is in such relationship, right, to so many different things, right? Like, and it's being us is as much granted by the world, like the deeper world that we're in, that comes through us. And it's that sense of knowing the right thing to listen to, right? And that tuning in that you can't really take credit for, but you submit. Like there's a sense of like where everything elicits so many responses, and you have to battle with yourself, and you're like, no, that thing right there is a different color than everything else. And I just, something tells me, just keep at that's actually our self is developed through that time. And there's something about the way that you're talking about it and how literal it's been for you that's really having me see more of the structures of the things that I'm looking at and working with. It's really great.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And again, with this, I had no idea where this conversation was going to go. I was just jumping in faith that we'd find something
Yeah.
good. But
Yeah.
yeah, if I can be of assistance to you in your project,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
completely see you're shining with the light of this bigger project, and I'm at your disposal. Like, upper management's making it clear to me that if you need anything,
Fantastic.
like, as long as I've got the ability
Yes.
to do it,
Yes.
I will.
Yes. So nice to meet you, my friend.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Speaking of calling, I'm hearing my wife in the background.
All right. Well, I
Yeah.
think that's a great place to wrap
Yeah.
up.